Welcome back to the Pigskins and Politics podcast. It's time for some politics. So if you happen to be watching or listening from the NFL episode, watching in particular, you'll see that we're actually recording on YouTube now. So we're going to be doing this every week, both as a video and as a strictly audio podcast. So thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Brian McFadden. Joining me, as always, like the gum on your shoe that you just can't get off because it's just too sticky, Will Southard. Will, time for some politics, man. You ready as always?
Let's do it, sir. But I need to be cleansed before we
always. Dude, I got you.
Before we riot and go crazy, we need to be cleansed.
It was a whole 42 seconds before the word riot came up in our podcast this week. Let's go ahead and bring in our second guest, a very special guest this week indeed. The first non-American guest that we have had on. So I'd like to introduce Sean Campbell. Sean is from London, Ontario in Canada. As I mentioned, he's got a unique outlook on American politics. So what better time to bring on a Canadian than when our country is about to go to civil war? Sean, welcome to the Pigskins and Politics podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be on, and I hope I can bring a unique perspective that maybe some Americans might not see.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I thought it was great that you were recommended, and super excited to have you on because we think our country's in turmoil right now. It must look absolutely insane from your perspective, so we're going to get to that. But as Will said, we never want to put our listeners direct from football after an hour and a half of good old-fashioned NFL talk and throw you right into some politics. That would be too much for us to handle, certainly, we think for you as well. So we're going to cleanse you. We're going to give you a palate cleanser, right? You've been trying some wines. You've been trying some football. You're going to try some politics.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to go deep into it, man.
You're just doing it, aren't you?
Now that I'm on video, I'm going to play it all up. Let's go.
You've been
for
trying
our
some
palate
wines.
cleanser.
You've been trying your cheeses.
You've been trying just a little taste.
Let's go full charcuterie on this bad boy.
You got a little bit of the spice coming in the chocolate. No. All right, but we are going to do our palate cleanser segment. So what we're going to talk about today was a suggestion by Sean. I always love to get suggestions from the guests that are coming on. So Sean's Canadian, and as Americans, we have all these very stupid stereotypes about Canadians. So, oh, Canada, they play hockey. Well, it turns out that Sean is a big hockey fan. So we decided let's talk about hockey as it pertains to the cultural difference between Americans, between Canadians. Sean, why don't you start by talking a little about what hockey means to you, how it's been a part of your life, and how you think it pertains to the Canadian culture?
Yeah, I think it plays a big part in the majority of Canadians' lives, both male and female. It's kind of a sport where it's very diverse, and it's becoming more and more diverse. I know for my family, our daily routine is get home from work and school, then go to the rinks for either a practice or a game. Both my parents go. It's like a big routine, and then we got our game days. Normally on weekends and stuff, we'll travel. So it's really a lifestyle almost is just going to hockey. My whole family enjoys it. It's also really good exercise. You learn a lot of teamwork. Just a lot of life skills that you can learn from just playing hockey, being with a team, leadership. If you're put in a leadership role, that's an amazing thing. And really, there's not many Canadians that don't enjoy hockey. It's, along with lacrosse, our national sport, Canadians go crazy over it. We just lost to the U.S. in the World Juniors. For those who aren't familiar with the World Juniors, it's kind of I guess you could say you have the NFL and then you have college. It's kind of like people that are at the college level there before professionals. So that was a big deal. I know a lot of Canadians were frustrated and didn't sleep over that, as I'm sure NFL fans are when their favorite team loses. Yeah, so I think
I don't even know anything about it.
I think like one time we had like that. Everybody got COVID like the beginning of the year, and the only thing that was on TV was like the lacrosse game. It's like this is like tennis mixed with golf, mixed with that. I think that's what it's like. It's like tennis,
a little bit of
with
soccer
golf.
involved, right?
Yeah,
kind of
soccer,
ish,
golf, yeah.
with a little bit of that. Yeah, so it was a interesting deal. But like the problem with hockey is you have to skate. I will say this is that I when I was in Norfolk, they had the Norfolk Admirals. Hockey games are a damn good time, and you don't have to know anything about hockey at all, and I don't at all. But they're a pretty good time. Also, fun hockey story. My buddy is a huge Caps fan. Big is that Russian with the gap tooth?
Oh,
Ovechkin.
Ovechkin.
Ovi.
Ovi.
Big Ovi fan. And we worked together, and we were doing a training in Texas, of all places. Not hockey fans, by the way. And this is like Game 7 of
They have the
Stanley
Stars,
Cup.
right? They have the Dallas Stars. There's at least one franchise in Texas.
Maybe.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is like
Dallas
Game
Stars,
7.
Sean can tell us.
of-
He knows hockey. We don't know hockey.
Dallas Stars.
Game 7 of the Stanley Cup the year that the Caps won. And like we're trying to watch it. So we were in this sports bar, and like all these TVs, bro, regular season Houston Astros baseball. Like not even like playoffs
Just
or
like a
or,
game
like,
111
just
out of 162.
yeah, it's just a random game. Like not even that good of a game. And like the Caps game was on this little tiny TV like in the corner, and we were like, is there any way we could? That's the Stanley Cup. Can we get that on like the big with sound? And they're like, no.
No.
So we had to like go back to the hotel. It's just funny that like the biggest game of like, you know what I mean, ever, and they're like they could just give two poops about it. But
So I agree.
But it's a good time.
About hockey games live. Super fun. So I went to a Panthers game, being from Florida. I went to an Islanders game, living in Long Island for a while. But the most fun I ever had at a hockey game, and you're going to love this, Will, was Florida State versus the University of Florida. It was like the intramural. It was not like varsity hockey because the Florida teams don't have varsity hockey teams. It was like intramural, but FSU beat UF by like 5-0, and there were like 6 fights that broke out. And it was at the Civic Center, but there was only like, I don't know, 1,000 of us there, so we were all like on the front row behind the glass, and it's just these Gator and Seminole hockey players just beating at each other, and the Seminoles won, and it was lovely.
Yeah, I definitely think hockey, there's a little bit for everyone. If you're someone that likes kind of fast pace, there's that. If you're someone that likes hard hits, like if you're a football player that likes hard hits, there's some of that. There's strategy. Obviously, there's fighting. If you're into fighting, there's always a fight in a hockey game, especially I find kind of college levels and lower levels. The NHL kind of is starting to get rid of a lot less fighting. But the
That's a
lower
shame.
levels, there's a lot of, especially if you get into like high school hockey, there's a lot of fights because you get teenagers with hormones going, thinking they're all better than each other, and that's just a recipe for disaster. So I definitely find there's a lot for everyone in hockey, and even if you don't understand what's going on, you can still kind of watch, and
Yeah.
there might be something you'll find. Yeah.
Yeah,
as a
and
teenager, can you confirm that your that hormones just rage at that age?
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay.
No one likes losing.
right.
Hockey.
Yeah,
Hockey
make sure you
players hate
channel that
losing.
energy to productive ends, sir.
I remember that the one thing that, because I didn't know anything about hockey growing up, unlike you, Sean, where you said it's a cultural thing, it's part of your family, like your parents go to the rink. That's awesome. So obviously I didn't get any of that growing up in North Carolina and Florida, but what I did have was video games. So NHL 94 on Super Nintendo. Man, I love playing that game, and you got in fights. They had fights in the game, and you just push A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. It's just like you grab the jersey and just like pummel the guy. So I did have a little bit of hockey knowledge at that point, but I do love going to live games. I love watching hockey. Like you said, it's a game that you may not have ever seen hockey before, but you can go, you can at least follow the action. You can understand that, okay, they have a puck, there's a net. If they score, all the lights go off and the music plays, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but you know what they don't do? Goal!
That's-
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Gully,
They
gully,
don't
gully,
do
gully,
that.
gully, gully, go. Like
Which
soccer,
is
or
the best thing
football.
about what's that other sport? Soccer.
Soccer,
yeah.
aka football. The rest of the world calls it.
I tell you, you talk about the rest of the world and cultures, and I know that we're not talking about this. We're talking about hockey, but
There's a cultural element, so it's relevant.
I lived in Bahrain for 6
remember.
months because I was in the Navy, and World Cup, man, like holy crap, is the World Cup like a big deal? Like everywhere but in the States. Like it's like the cool, like the sports bars are packed.
Our women's team is
like,
good, so yeah, there's that.
You got everybody going crazy. Like it's such a good time. So, I have a lot of Canadian coworkers actually. So I kind of get the hockey indoctrinations pretty much all the time, and they're pretty crazy about that too.
Yeah, I find in the States too, it depends on kind of the region you're at. Like places like Minnesota, I hear they're pretty good hockey cities.
Right.
Pittsburgh, their team was considering moving until they got Sidney Crosby, and now you look at Pittsburgh, it's They're known for their hockey now, which is incredible that one player completely changed an organization. And I think
I
that's
feel
the
like
effect that
yeah, I feel like
superstars can
he's
have.
like the Gronk of Pittsburgh, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He does. Sean is not a football fan, but maybe he knows who
I
Gronk
know.
is. I don't know.
I
That's why I
know. I
felt
know
like I could
the
make it
big
a
players. And,
comparison with no context and have him just agree.
And just have him agree. But Gronk is Gronk. Everybody knows who Gronk. Gronk has his
yeah.
own. He was a wrestler, and he's got a whole. He's multi talented. I'm feeling cleansed. What about you guys?
Let's do
I'm
this.
feeling
Let's
cleansed.
do it
Yep,
because you
let's
know
do
what?
this.
There is an insane amount. There's no way we're gonna to cover everything. So, quick recap of last week. Tuesday, we're recording this right now on Tuesday night, January 12th. We recorded our last politics episode Tuesday night, January 5th. So the certification in Congress was due to happen the next day. I think Will started off the podcast by saying, oh, we don't really have a lot of ammo this week. There's not anything major to talk about. And I think I ended the podcast by saying, oh, we'll see what the dramatics in Congress happen tomorrow. Holy donkey balls. Nobody saw what coming. So, quick, the very next day, there was a pro-Trump extremist who stormed the Capitol.
AKA supporters.
I said extremists. I could have said rioters and loot. No, pro-Trump extremists. There were supporters there who didn't rush the Capitol. So we have to be fair.
Fair enough. Fair
there
enough.
were people who were at the march who didn't actually break and enter and attempt an insurrection. But before we get to that, quick updates, because we were covering the Georgia runoff. That's really what we were focusing on last week, that and the Trump's phone a friend to Secretary of State in Georgia. So I do want to update that as we were covering live last Tuesday, the Democrats did win both seats. So Democrat John Ossoff beat Republican David Perdue in the standard Senate race, and then in the special election, Raphael Warnock defeated Kelly Loeffler. So what that means, as a reminder, is the Senate is now split completely 50-50. Got 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, or at least 50 Congress or senators that caucus with Democrats. There are a couple independents in there, but they caucus with the Democrats, which means that Vice President-elect Kamala Harris would be the tiebreaker if there's an exact split, a tie in a vote, which effectively gives Democrats control of the White House and Congress. Before we talk about the riots, and that's probably what mainly we're going to talk about, I want to get your thoughts, Sean, on our electoral system, whether it's the Electoral College or the way U.S. elections are like this big. It's like a rock star. It's a reality. It's larger than just, oh, this is who's going to run our country. It's so much more than that. But what is your perspective as a Canadian on the U.S. electoral system?
Well, first of all, there's kind of three main points I wanted to kind of talk about. But first of all, really a big thing I find is there's a lot of division in looking in. I find there's a lot of division in politics. A lot of people, you're either this pro-Trump supporter, this radical Trump supporter, white supremacist, or you're this Biden socialist. And I think a lot of people, they pick a side and they, instead of finding a happy median of both, they're just completely going left or completely going right. So that's one main thing I find. There's a lot of division, and this is one thing I wanted to get into that could help. That is the Electoral College. So for those of people that don't know about Canada's kind of electoral system, we are a monarch, so we have a prime minister, not a president. In Canada, we have what's obviously parties. We have Conservative Party, Liberal Party, New Democrat Party, Green Party, Progressive Conservative Party. So we have a variety of parties, and we have.
So you're saying it's possible to have more than two?
Yeah, it is possible. A lot of people think there's only two parties, but it is possible to have more than two.
All those parties and none of them are a good time.
Exactly.
Sorry to disappoint, Will.
And so basically what happens is we have a House of Commons, and there's 338 seats in the House of Commons. So every seat is kind of a riding. So Northern Toronto, Western Toronto, Calgary, different ridings, right? The one thing I find about the Electoral College is you could just barely win, say, a big state like California with it's 55 electoral votes, right? I believe California.
55 for California.
Yeah,
Yes.
55. Yeah. So you could just barely win the California vote and get all those votes, and the other guy gets none. Where if you have 338 different ridings like we have, So that would be 338 votes, and one riding is only one vote. It kind of, if you lose one just barely lose, it's not as big of a difference as if you lose California and you're losing 55 votes. Obviously, California is not a swing state now, but that's not to say it won't be in the future. So I really like having that kind of divided up more and more into regions. Some people say they want a popular vote. I don't, obviously in the states that wouldn't work because you have California who actually has a higher population than we do in Canada. So what would happen is parties would just go to California, just go to New York, and then all the other smaller states they would leave alone and they would pretty much be isolated, right? So really, I think at the end of the day,
Paradise.
no one's going to be happy because there's always going to be some flaws within an election, right? But I think Canada can learn from the U.S. and the U.S. can learn from Canada. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that part. Another one this year, which was new, was mail-in ballots. So for us, I follow the political parties, and we have you vote for which leader you want to lead your party. The Conservative Party recently this summer voted in a new leader, and because of Corona and everything, obviously it was 100% mail-in ballots, and the machine ripped up some of the ballots. There was a bunch of problems with it, and this was in the summer, and I said, "Oh no, what's going to happen with the U.S.?" Luckily, I mean, it went smoother than I thought. I thought it was going to be complete chaos, but that's not to say that there wasn't, maybe some votes thrown out for both sides. So I think really,
So
mail-in
so we did
ballots, it
something right.
is, yeah, it is the way of the
One thing.
future, but
Yeah.
I think we do need to kind of look into it more and make sure it's more secure. Maybe even online, even that could be a potential. I know cybersecurity, that's a danger though, but I think maybe online potentially might be safer than actually mailing it in.
I actually agree with that. And you're going to get the highest level of voter participation if you make it so easy that they can just, in a secure, encrypted way that's able to check ID and make sure people only vote once, but you can just go on your laptop in your boxer briefs with your tank top on and your beer and cast your vote in 5 minutes. So
Or
Exactly.
your grapefruit juice
or
for
your
people that can't drink.
or your grapefruit juice if you're not
Or
old enough to drink.
whatever you drink in Canada, Labatt Blue. I think
Uh,
it's Labatt. I think it's Labatt Blue.
I'm not sure Sean is of drinking
Molson?
it
age as
depends.
well. So.
It depends on the region.
Molson? It might be Molson also.
Moosehead's a famous one out here.
Nice.
Moosehead.
Fair enough.
It
Appropriately.
Fair
depends.
enough.
Different regions have their beers. So yeah.
Well, as much as I would love to talk about beer, we have to talk about the. So,
That's the third. That's the third podcast that we do. It's the craft brew
the craft
podcast.
beer. Yeah, here's the IPA of the week. No, palate cleanser would make sense at least for that. Anyway, so let's talk about what the hell happened on Wednesday. So I've had some friends that putting it in an interesting manner. We're used to seeing this kind of stuff far away. We're used to seeing this when Iraq was toppled or Libya, under Gaddafi. You're used to seeing, oh yeah, that's they're storming the Capitol. Good for them. Take down your tyrannical government. But to see our own Capitol building, first of all, where was the security? That's a whole other thing. We can get to that. But to see actual American citizens storming the Capitol, and we've had, as last check, at least 5 people die from this. But let's start with Sean. What is your thought on this? Being an outsider from a different country, what were you thinking, like, watching all this go down?
Well, when I first saw it, I said, "This is like ridiculous." I flipped on the news. It was probably about 12 o'clock here. So in Washington, D.C., I think they're an hour ahead or an hour behind. So it was either 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock around there in Washington. And just like I saw the big crowd forming, I was like, "This is nuts." And then they're going up the steps. I see them and they're on climbing walls, and I'm like, "How is this happening?" Right? Because I know the U.S. You guys are you have a huge defense budget. You spend so much on defense, and here you have this Capitol
welcome, by the
Hill
way.
being taken over. And the thing is, like, luckily it didn't happen, but even someone that wasn't a Trump supporter, you could have had someone from when Al Qaeda was, I know they're not as big of a problem now, like Al Qaeda or ISIS member come in with the suicide vest and just blow the place to smithereens. You had, your vice president was in there. Um, the A bunch of senators were in there. I believe there were some that weren't in there at the time. Not everyone
And
was
the
in there,
House,
but you had
both houses of Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, were going through voting procedures. So you had a very large percentage of both sitting senators and representatives present in this building. And you make a great point. What if it was a better prepared group? What if it was a well-armed group with a plan, with a strategy? How much worse could it have been? How do you not have it at the Capitol building, right? This isn't like some random shack where, no, this was the U.S. Capitol building.
exactly. And one thing too that I just figured out is apparently the Capitol building wasn't insured, so this is going to come completely out of the American taxpayers'
Taxpayers.
pocket. So I know conservatives and Republicans are more against, higher taxes and spending money where it's not necessary. And
Fiscally
now
conservative, sure.
you're spending money where this wasn't necessary, right?
I mean,
Unnecessary broken windows and stuff like that.
$750 billion on national defense and the heart of American democracy falls in less than 2 hours to the Duck Dynasty and a guy in a Chewbacca bikini.
And the Viking guy with the
Viking, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Whoever that freaking clown shoe is, who's
that's all it
apparently a
took.
picky eater in jail.
Oh yeah, he's only accepting organic food and they're not giving it to him, so he hasn't eaten since last week.
He refused to eat.
Oh, boo-hoo. I mean, so I'm a vet, right? And like, you can say what you want about that. Like, I mean, I was never like super, like, I'm not a Navy SEAL, right? Like, I'm not on that level. Like, I did it for college. Let's be honest. However, you get a little of that patriotism and nationalism, right? And like, dude, it's different, man. Like, here's my thing. So like, everybody's like the hypocrisy of liberals, right? Like, you're gonna riot and loot in the street, or riot in the streets and loot and destroy small businesses over George Floyd, but you're not gonna call out, like, you're not gonna overlook that, right? It's completely different, man. The symbolism is different. You're targeting private businesses. You're on the street. Like, they were in the Capitol, bro. Like, where, like, democracy is happening. Like, senators are like, and like politicians are like under their desks.
They're like hiding under
like
the stairs, and yeah.
And this is a tough comparison, and like, our conservative listener base is gonna take big issue with what I'm about to say, but what happened was not that far off from like a Benghazi type incident. And I don't mean like a planned assassination, coordinated attack like you guys are talking about. But what I mean is just like 5 people died. Like, very, very easily, hundreds of people could have died.
Right.
And like, lawmakers could have died. You could have had, I mean, just bedlam, like mayhem. And thankfully it wasn't that. So, but the next one would probably be more coordinated. You never know. So, I mean, it was.
And there are reports. There are reports that first of all, everybody said, oh, they had no warning. It came out that the FBI did warn Capitol Police the day before that there were talks on some of this right-wing social media and underground chat that this was going to happen. But there also have been reports that there will be more attacks. There's more attacks being planned leading up to Inauguration Day. They're already increasing the security on Inauguration Day. It seems like this isn't going to be the last we hear of this. And maybe the next one is better planned. I want to comment on one video I saw. So there was one of the peaceful protesters who entered the Capitol and decided to break some stuff. Rioters, whatever. They caught her on video. She was crying, and they're like, coming out of the Capitol. What happened? Oh, they pushed me back and maced me. Okay, well, why did they mace you? Because I was in the Capitol building. It's a revolution. But she was like so upset that she got maced. Like, did you not think that through? Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Like the lady that got shot, the veteran. And it's not funny. Like, it's tragic.
It's not. It's really
I mean,
not.
There's a lot of memes that are going around about that and stuff like that. And
which is awful.
Whether you feel bad for her or you don't, like, I mean, there's an officer like probably scared for his life because he doesn't know there's other cops on the other side of that thing. You know what I mean? And like she's like bounding over this broken glass wall to like charge into like where there were like dude.
And they had guns
I
pulled.
mean,
They were warning them. This wasn't like
and like that's what I'm saying. Like
yeah.
how do you I don't I mean I know you get wrapped up in the moment, you know, and like it's very easy to do that in these kind of situations, but you have to kind of just have some mindfulness and some awareness to be like, where am I right now? Like, what am I doing and what are the risks? Because like you can't just walk in there. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's not like, you know, you're in some area where normally people are allowed.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're just there after hours. Like, no, dude, like they'll shoot you if you jump the gate at the White House. Like whether you're armed or not, you know?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, man.
Yeah, honestly, it baffled me to see it. Um, I think there was a lot of people that did go with good hearts, but at the same time, there was a lot of people that went with bad intentions. And when you get these big crowds, it takes a couple people to start a huge riot, right? You get one guy breaking the window, and then the next guy says, "Oh, that's a good idea." He breaks the other window, and now you got complete chaos.
It's
And
a
I think
Mob
power
that's
thing,
what,
yeah.
mentality. Yeah.
yeah, it's the mob mentality that really ruins everything, and that's even what I think we saw in the summer with the whole Black Lives Matter thing. Uh, there's a lot of people with good hearts, but then all of a sudden there's someone that wants to start problems, and they provoke people, and now all of a sudden you got police precinct burnt down or whatever. I mean,
The,
I'm kind of iffy on going into the Capitol. I don't think they should have did that at all because that is a federal building and you
Yeah.
shouldn't be in there,
It's
in my
trespassing
opinion.
at that point. Yeah.
But I think protesting at the Capitol is a good idea. Not in the
Of
Capitol, but
course.
outside. I think that's a better idea than going into the streets because you're they want to protest the government. If you're out and burning down a business or stopping traffic, that doesn't really affect the people, say, in Congress or in the Senate. But if you actually go to them and you start protesting, they look out the window and they see, I think that's more effective. But the second you take it actually inside the building, that's when you're in the wrong there.
Yeah, and that's where you cross the line. I mean, freedom of
Yeah.
speech, the ability to protest, is one of the tenets of our democracy here in the states. So, absolutely, they had a march, they had a rally earlier about it that Trump was at. That's fine. That's all
Yeah.
fine. Whether you agree with that or not, that's fine with their ability to protest. Even if they wanted to march to the Capitol and continue to protest there while the vote was going on inside, not only fine, that's encouraged because that's your right as an American. But the second you cross the line and break into that place, a number of them armed, breaking down windows, you are no longer protesting. You are trying to start a civil war. You are part of an insurrection at that point. So now let's talk about the political fallout from that, because the moment itself, besides just being like, I was in shock for a little bit. Like I couldn't recognize, like I said, a lot of people said, oh, we see this overseas, but wait, no, this is happening in our country? Like just like 9/11, like it was just, there was a moment like, wait, we're being attacked? As Americans, we're just not used to that. So to see our own people do it was crazy. But let's talk about some of the political fallout. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are not happy with Trump. This has been a little bit of a tenet of his campaign and his presidency, where he's happy to get his base fired up, and whatever the issue is, to fight for him, and they're fiercely loyal to him, and we've talked about that multiple times on this podcast. His ability to inspire, you have to at least admire that from he is able to motivate his base. But when you do it in a way where it's very clear that he's encouraging them to do this, how else are they going to take it? Right? You may not have said, hey guys, storm the Capitol, break down the windows, see if you could take down some congressmen for me. You may not have said that explicitly, but it's clear that the language he has used in over 4 years in his campaign as well, and the language he even used at the actual rally itself, really was one of the core motivations for that crowd to do what they did. So some of the things that have fallen out from that is you've actually had a number of Republicans speak out, like fiercely speak out, not like, oh, no comments, but you've actually said this is insurrection. I think Mitt Romney actually used that word. You've even had Mitch McConnell start to say that he's open to the idea of impeachment. Mitch McConnell, the number one Republican in the Senate, opened the idea of impeachment. Same with McCarthy, who's the top Republican in the House. Liz Cheney, who is the number 3 Republican, has actively said that she would vote for impeachment. So this is where we're at. The first step was Nancy Pelosi introduced a measure that would call on President Trump to be removed from office through the 25th Amendment, which means that Vice President Pence would have to do that. Pence already said no to that. But I want to talk about the 25th Amendment specifically first. Will, what are your thoughts on that tactic, using the 25th Amendment in light of everything that happened?
I don't. So I think there's a couple things, right? Whether you agree or not with what social media did to Donald Trump, whether you agree or not, muting him in that way probably prevents a fair amount of like stirring the pot,
stoking
right?
the fire. Yeah.
So that happened. That was a thing. Like whether you agree or not, that happened. I think, here's what I think, just before we talk about the 25th Amendment. I think Trump was legitimately surprised by what happened. Like, not necessarily like upset, but I really don't think he thought or thinks that people were that crazy or that feverish over over him, right? Like, I don't think he realized it, and then when he's like talking all these words and people literally go burn things down and start going crazy, I think he was probably like, I'm screwed. You know what I mean? And like, he can't, to his brand, he's not going to like say, no, you guys are idiots. I mean, he said, we love you. We hear you, like all those kind of things, like, you're special, but go home in peace. He's treading that brand and that line. But I think though, for the first time, it really got beyond him. You know what I mean? Like it really went beyond like what his control, his like little locus of like what he was trying to stir up. So I don't think he would do that again. And the other thing is that, I think that McConnell and a lot of these Republicans that now are backing this, they're riding the wave. You know what I mean? Like they've sensed the tide turning against Trump. It is more politically advantageous to support something like that. I mean, it's the 12th. We're what, like
8 days?
How many days away?
8 days.
8 days.
January 20th.
And we're gonna impeach him. You know what I mean? Like, he's neutered. Leave him alone. Just go on with your business. Like, now to your question about 25th Amendment, I think if we were further back, I think you would absolutely consider it. And if the social media companies had not done what they did and he had the ability to kind of keep going on and doing things like this, I think you need to consider it. But that's a dangerous like precedent to set. That you just like, nope, that guy's friggin' crazy. Like, because that's what intended for is if you're incapacitated. You know, like if you're a vegetable and like you really can't do the job, but not if you're just like,
So that's actually the exact point I wanted to make, and I'm going to completely agree with you. And there's a couple things you brought up that I want to expand on after this. So the 25th Amendment, let's look at it through the lens of a political tactic. So the 25th Amendment is not designed to take out a president that has the flaws that Trump has. It is designed for somebody who, let's say John F. Kennedy was shot, right? And he goes in a coma and he doesn't have the physical ability to pass power. Or if Trump went into a coma when he had COVID earlier and he's not physically able to hand over power to Pence, the 25th Amendment allows the vice president to take that power with Congress to transfer it in the event that the president is incapacitated. So I disagree with this move by the Democrats. I thought it's pointless to do something like that for the 25th Amendment.
And a bad look. It's locker room fodder.
It is. So
for the Republicans.
And we've got so much to talk about. We're going to get to a few other points there. But before we do, you mentioned about social media, and I know, Sean, that you were interested in at least commenting on, so as a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they have taken steps to either temporarily or permanently ban Donald Trump, at least through Inauguration Day. What are your thoughts on that tactic?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think a lot of this is the Democrats are scared about Trump running in 2024. That's my personal opinion, because if they do invoke the 25th Amendment, he won't be able to run again in 2024. Um, some people
You
think that
just imagine to what you listen to what you just said. If we remove him because he's incapacitated and cannot do the job because he's effing crazy, he can't run in 2024. Like it's just sorry. Go on, but it's what you just said
because
like
yeah,
is just kind of is
if you
ridiculous.
are removed, you can't. You're not. They won't let you run again. So he
I
wouldn't
would
be
hope
able to
so.
run in 2024.
I would hope so.
By
Right.
taking
He's
away
agreeing
his
with you. He's
Twitter,
just talking about the
yeah,
absurdity of the whole process. Yeah.
Yes.
by taking away his Twitter, his Instagram, whatever, you're also not allowing him to have a platform if he did want to run again. So personally, I do think Trump did want to run again. He's definitely not running again anymore because there's a lot of Republicans
Trumped
against
out.
him now. I don't think he would get in. Um, but a lot of people did like him because he said it how it is. Uh, Taking away his Twitter, yet a lot of people they say it's a private company, they should be able to do what he wants. To me, I see Twitter as a media platform for a lot of politicians. A lot of politicians are on Twitter. A lot of people use Twitter to kind of see what politicians are up to without having to go to say Fox News or CNN or whatever. So I do think that Twitter shouldn't have removed him. Is it preventing another attack or whatever? I think potentially because Trump, he's not the smartest. I think they should have took it the second he became president. The Republican Party should have said, "Get rid of your Twitter," because he doesn't
Well,
really say
They
the right
tried
things on
to.
Twitter.
normally you do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they tried
he's
Normally
to.
you
just
do.
crazy on it.
And
He's
so, and
crazy on Twitter.
presidents in the past, Obama had an aide that would tweet. No, he wouldn't even let anybody else touch his phone. He had to do it himself.
Yeah, and I think they should have did that with Trump. Um, but yeah, I really think, to be honest, the Democrats don't want him running again in 2024.
And
And
neither
that's
I
did
don't
the
think they're. I
Republicans.
don't think they're scared of it though.
So that was the point I wanted to extend on because you mentioned it briefly, Will, and Sean, you brought it up, is 2024. So what I read earlier is one of the reasons that McConnell is considering the impeachment this time around, even though, and the impeachment, by the way, does not have to happen before inauguration day. You can impeach a president even after he's out of office. So
Really?
the idea is, and I've heard some Democrats say that the idea is to have him impeached within the first 100 days. Pelosi's trying to move it along super quickly, maybe a little too quickly, but he doesn't have to be impeached. What impeachment can do for a president who's only been in term for 4 years is prevent him from running again. And that seems to be why some of these Republicans are getting on board. First of all, they lost Georgia. So you're talking about they've ridden Trump's coattails. They've let him lead this party for better or for worse, and it cost them the House of Representatives 2 years ago, and it cost them the Senate. And Mitch McConnell, his speakership, or his head of the Senate, Senate majority. So it's no longer politically advantageous to stick with Trump, right? They don't. Yes, his base is gonna. There's some danger in criticizing Trump because of the sway he holds over his base, but clearly politically it's not been successful for them to support him. So a lot of these GOP are saying this might be the way to get him out of the party. That was what it was. A CNN article that mentioned that it was a source that was talking to Mitch McConnell, and the reason he's considering actually, and didn't say he's going to do it, didn't say he's going to vote for it, didn't say he's going to support it, but he's at least thinking about it because this could be the way to get Trump out of the Republican Party and kind of start over with him.
And not damage, you can kind of save face too. You can kind of point to this sedition.
We saw what was going on. We fixed it. We care. We're Republicans.
Yeah, exactly. And just say like, hey, Republicans, sorry about your boy, but he kind of did it to himself. You know what I mean? Like, that's essentially what he's talking about doing. Without just like causing an infighting. But like the Republicans are gonna have to heal from this, man. They're gonna have to find some identity because like, look what they did to the people that are voting for the to like contest the vote. Like they're getting crushed. Those Republicans like
especially after the insurrection, after the attack on the Capitol. I don't think they were getting crushed as bad prior to that.
And he, I listened to his arguments, and he's like, this is the forum. Just like you said, you're talking about protesting, right? When you're like, this is how you do it. You put you legally and then use your established pathways to to get your voice heard and all those kind of things. And
Legal
like,
process.
yeah, okay, sure. But like there's no evidence. Like the whole thing with the fraud and all that kind of stuff, it's just like we need to move on as a country. Like that is looking out for yourself and your own interests and not looking out for the betterment of the country. Like even if there was an isolated incident of the fraud or whatever, like we right now need to get through this election. You know what I mean? Like there's another time for
Without a
that
civil
fight.
war, please.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So I don't know, man. That's kind of where I fall on those things.
Yeah, I definitely think that really kind of uniting everyone is very important. One thing the Republican Party has to be very careful of, and like you've already mentioned, is being careful with how they criticize Trump, because they do want to move forward with this, but you also don't want to lose the hardcore Trump supporters, because I know there are
Like
some Trump
trumpets.
supporters that just won't vote. If the Republican Party, they'll be like,
Yeah,
well,
it
you
happened in
made fun of
Georgia.
Trump, I'm not gonna vote for you. And so they do have to be really, really careful with how they proceed with that.
And I
Yeah.
mentioned, I've mentioned it a couple times, but this poll, I'm just fascinated by it. The poll, a CNBC poll that came out after the election, that first of all, like 76% of the people who voted for Trump in this poll believed that he won legitimately and was stolen from him, and like 72% of those said that if Trump started his own party, they would leave the Republican Party. So you're talking about nearly 3/4 of the people who are registered Republican would leave the party. This is the danger. Their Republican Party is at a crossroads right now. Even if Mitch McConnell supports this and it goes through and they impeach him, you are going to lose a lot of people. You're going to people who are going to deregister. They're not going to be Democrats, of course, but they might start their own party. Trump could feel the power of all this and start the Trump party. It's very likely that this could cause a separation in the GOP.
See, and here's the thing, man, is like, obviously we have our own political spin on this. Like, Sean, I don't know your politics, like your American equivalent politics, whatever that is, but like there are a lot of like good-hearted Republicans, right? And like there are a lot of Republican ideals that are like I agree with that are
Sure.
valid. Like,
Yeah.
like Republicans like, and I'm not talking about like the ravenous like trumpets, the crazies. Like not
The
you.
people who would storm the Capitol.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm talking about sensible Americans that just want to, work hard. They don't want all their money going to the government. They don't want us to waste government spending. They want to protect, the religious institutions and the family. Like those people are not evil. They're not bigots. They're not racists. You know what I mean?
They're
There's
Americans.
a lot of good.
We've said this before.
Yeah,
They're still Americans.
and like, I would love for us to get back to where we can. Like I said, I voted for Bush. I voted for Obama. Um, I would love to get some good Republican candidates that really have some views that are a little more,
moderate and
no, not moderate, a little more just like intelligent,
reasonable.
that can empathize, that have
Yeah.
some charisma, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like leaders. Like that's what we need. We need leaders to sort of come together. And like as much as Biden wasn't really my first choice, it's good that he's a little more center than a lot of liberals would want.
He's the
for
rebound.
right now.
He's the rebound person you date before you find your long term.
Right. So
Yeah, I think
anyway,
also that's the two-party system. That's the problem with it, because you got two candidates, right? Um, if where in Canada we do have multiple parties, so if the leader of one party is not good, you still have a bunch of other parties that you can
haven't
choose
you
from.
elected Trudeau for like 20 years?
Oh, I can't stand him. Don't even get me started on him.
Yeah.
I think
Give us
What don't you like
30
about him?
seconds.
We
'cause-
haven't talked anything about him. Like I'm
Yes,
sure there's some
let's-
people that see him on TV. They're like, that guy looks nice. What's
America's
his
falling
problem?
apart. Let's hear about Canada. Let's hear about your prime minister, Sean. Go.
So currently we in the G20 we are running the worst national deficit in the G20, and
Number
we
one.
keep
We're
That's
number
what we do in
changing with-
America.
we keep changing with the worst unemployment with Italy in the G7. So
Woo!
currently our economy is not doing very good. Really, we're giving out handouts because we have to give out handouts. And I do agree with, shutting down some things, wearing masks, socially distancing. But I think we're creating more problems with our solutions. For example, suicides through the roof, drug overdoses through the roof, domestic violence is through the roof. And I think we should be opening more. And that way we don't have to give companies money because we're forcing them to shut down. So now instead of the company making money and paying taxes, they're actually taking money from the government. So we're just creating a hole. And then our government likes to take out loans and stuff, but the banks are going to start to get really greedy, and they're going to start putting up the interest rates. So our debt's going just through the roof, and our ethics critic Pierre Poilievre said we're on the verge of a financial crisis. So that's not very good.
So
And
we're
I
not
think
the only one who's screwed. Okay,
Yeah,
that's good. That's
yeah.
reassuring.
Canada's politics, I find a lot of people don't know much about them.
Yeah.
But I do think we need a change in our government as well. I think our relations with the US will get better because both kind of more liberal governments, Biden and Trudeau. Trudeau didn't really criticize Trump much at all. Um, but now that he knows Trump's done, he's kind of said some things about him. We know Trudeau didn't like Trump. Um, but I think it will help maybe trade relations between our two countries, both having a liberal government. So I think that could actually help out a bit. Although I don't like Trudeau at all. I can't stand just
So is it
the way he
wait?
handles
Is it Trudeau or Trudeau?
Trudeau.
Trudeau. It's French.
Trudeau, yeah. French, yeah.
Trudeau.
Trudeau.
Yeah. All
Trudeau.
right.
Oh, Trudeau.
Trudeau.
Way to Americanize it, Will.
Got it. Got it.
All right.
I do know the only thing I know about Canada, because I do a lot of like international like engineering business, is that every freaking one of your provinces has like its own set of like engineering standards, certifications, CRNs. Like if you go to like make something and certify it, like you have to get it per province. It's like really annoying. Like I don't know how you guys are like organized, but it's not like states where like kind of like
There's a
you know,
federal
you just,
standard, and you can just
yeah, like it's way more like regional up there.
Yeah, regional. I do like the idea of kind of provinces having more authority than the federal government. I really like that idea because there's different regions that have certain beliefs. Like, for example, Alberta is very conservative. Um, and as you go kind of more out east, they're more kind of liberal. So out west is more Republican, and out east is more Democrat. So I do like the provinces having more control, just so it keeps the more people happy. Because the more power you give to the federal government, the more people that are unhappy because you have so many different regions with different beliefs.
So
I do really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a young dude. How old are you?
16.
Okay. So like you have friends, I would hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like over here, young people for the most part I think slant pretty liberal, right?
Yeah.
Just for whatever reason. They want free college probably or something. But there are a lot of older dudes like, you know, and women obviously that are you start to get a lot of Trump supporters and Republicans, and you kind of once you start working, you can become a little more. So like over there, like is it the same way, or is it like are there like factions of Trump supporters that like over there?
Trump
Like
supporters
I
to
can't imagine
Canada.
you guys would care about Trump that much other
There's
than like how it
actually
affects
a
you.
fair bit of Trump rallies in the Toronto area.
Really?
Toronto's more liberal, like Democrat, but there's actually a fair bit of Trump rallies, um, even out west, because the federal
Why?
government isn't really nice with our oil. Out west, they're not letting them kind of produce oil. So
Drill. Yeah.
there's a lot of rallies with that, and a lot of conservatives will have Trump flags. I don't really understand it.
It's like not
Because
like he can do anything for
Yeah.
you.
yeah,
Really.
it's Trump
You
doesn't
have
do
no
anything
power
for
here.
us.
Maybe,
Exactly.
maybe after Trump gets impeached, he moves to Canada, runs for office
Oh,
there,
let's
and then
fucking-
you
oh,
guys
so
can
sorry.
deal with him.
Let's hope so.
All right, I'm
Sorry.
going to wrap it up right there. This has been a great episode. Sean, thank you so much for coming on. It's so awesome to get both the young perspective and the Canadian perspective. I thought you did a great job. Would love to have you back on for a future politics episode. You'll be our resident Canadian. Find out what the people up north think of all the shenanigans that we're getting into. Will, thanks as always. I know you're not going to be on next week. I'm sure most listeners will be disappointed. I'm sure our downloads will go down. But
I'm going to be in the great state of Tennessee.
Great state of Tennessee. So there you
Yeehaw!
go. Thanks as always for coming on. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you're catching this on YouTube, we're going to be putting this on YouTube each week. Thanks if you stuck around from both the football and the politics. You're a trooper. Really appreciate you. But if you're just here for the politics or if you just watch the NFL, we love you guys too. Please subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. Leave us those 5-star reviews. And we'll see you next week on the PPP.
Later.